Okay, so this is the lecture for joints, so chapter 8. The slide is joints, classification of joints based on structure, so what they're made of. So we have fibrous joints, and fibrous joints are made of dense connective tissue, and they have lots of collagen. So they're going to connect bones that are in close contact. Cartilaginous joints have hyaline cartilage or fibrocartilage between the bones. Synovial joints are the most complex joints. And we'll talk about the structure of the synovial joint in a lot more detail, but synovial joints are structured so they allow free movement or a lot of movement. Okay, joints, classification of joints based on their function, so how much movement do they allow? The synarthrotic joints, or synarthroses, are immovable, so you can't move them. Amphiarthrotic joints, or amphiarthroses, are slightly movable. And diarthrotic joints are very movable. All right, so let's talk about the three types of fibrous joints. The first type of fibrous joint that we're going to talk about, and the three types are syndesmosis, suture, and gomphosis. The first type is syndesmosis, and these joints have long fibers that connect bones. That connect the bones. Okay. They tend to be amphiarthrotic, like the distal ends of the tibia and fibula. So that's why we learn those bone names. And this one, we have an interosseous membrane, which will be right here. Membrane, and an interosseous ligament, which is here. So these are two syndesmosis joints. All right, the other two kinds, you have fibrous joints, or fibrous joints. You have the suture, and the suture is synarthrotic. You can't move it. It's between the flat bones of the skull. So think parietal and the two parietal bones and the occipital bone and the parietal bone. And then you have that sutural ligament in there that makes up that joint. Gomphosis is also a synarthrotic joint. So this is synarthrotic. And this joint is the one that holds the tooth into your mandible or maxilla. So it's kind of this cone-shaped socket in here. And the ligament that holds the tooth in there is called your periodontal ligament. And so these are synarthrotic. We hope they remain synarthrotic. Okay. So the gomphosis. All right, the two types of cartilaginous joints. We have synchondrosis joints and symphysis joints. The synchondrosis joints are just bands of hyaline cartilage that hold the bones together. So you have bands of hyaline cartilage. Okay, and then you would have a temporary one in the epiphyseal plates. Remember, that's how your bone grows in length. Those are synarthrotic and temporary. So they're synarthrotic and temporary. And then the one between the manubrium and the first rib is also a cartilaginous joint that's synarthrotic and permanent. So between the first rib here and the manubrium, this joint is synarthrotic and permanent. Okay. A symphysis joint, or the symphysis joints, I should say. The symphysis joints are pads of hyaline cartilage sorry, not pads. Pads of fibrocartilage. Pads of fibrocartilage with a hyaline cartilage between the bone, hyaline cartilage coating between the bones. Okay, so just to clarify that. So the symphysis joints are pads of fibrocartilage with a hyaline cartilage coating them between the bones. The pubis symphysis joint, or not pubis, the symphysis pubis joint here is between the two pubic bones. It's an amphiarthrotic joint. So this one is amphiarthrotic. And then during childbirth, and even during the last trimester, hormones, specifically a hormone called relaxin, cause this joint to become looser or more loose. And then the joints between the vertebrae are symphysis joints. So these are also amphiarthrotic. Okay, they're amphiarthrotic. So they only move a little bit, but each joint moves a little bit. And if the length of the vertebral column, each joint moves a little bit, that's why we're able to bend over as far as we can. Okay, so that's what allows us to be more flexible in the back. All right, synovial joints make up most of the joints of the skeletal system. And they're diarthrotic. They have these articular cartilage that covers the end of the bones. Remember that articular cartilage is made of hyaline cartilage. They have a joint capsule that surrounds or forms the joint cavity. And there's two layers to the joint capsule. There's an outer layer, which is the fibrous layer. So you have this outer fibrous layer. And then that's made of dense connective tissue. And that holds the capsule to the periosteum. So this outer fiber layer ends up being continuous with the periosteum of the bone. Okay, and then the inner layer is loose connective tissue. So it has this inner layer of loose connective tissue. And that loose connective tissue is called the synovial membrane. And it produces a synovial fluid. The synovial fluid is it's extremely lubricating. It's like 100 times more lubricating than WD-40. You know, WD-40, the stuff you spray on your bike to lubricate it. The synovial fluid is even more lubricating than that. Some joints have menisci, which are pads of cartilage to help pad the joint. So they have these menisci. You maybe have heard of someone with a torn meniscus. And then there are some places where you have bursa. And bursa are sacs that are full of synovial fluid, and those sacs help to reduce tension, friction, as like a tendon slides over a bone. So the bursa are these pads, and to help I'm trying to change my pen color here. Oops. Okay, so those bursa would be like a sac right here, and it would help to reduce this friction as a tendon slides over the bone. And bursitis would be inflammation of those bursa because because of overuse. And then with any joint, you're going to have ligaments that connect the two bones together to help stabilize the joint. All right, so that's the introduction to joints.